Welcome to Takin Care of Business on Kern Radio, News Talk 1180 for the best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock. And now we're on 1230 KGAEO at 10 o'clock on Saturday. And for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Your host is Clay Kerner, and I'm Marty Pay. And behind the board we have Greg Held. Great show last week with Supervisor Karen Go and Andy Stanley.
Yeah, we had a really good time with them, didn't we, last week? Andy is hilarious.
Yes, he is.
A community of moochers.
Yes, that was our second guest with Charlie Sykes, author of A Nation of Moochers. We have to have him back. I had one listener, Clay, send me an email saying that she was screaming at the computer agreeing with everything he said.
It's hard not to, and David will be able to, our guest today will be able to attest to some of these things.
Definitely. In the second half today, we have Mark Titus, author of Don't Put Me In, Coach, My Incredible NCAA Journey from the End of the Bench to the End of the Bench. But now, by phone from Sacramento, in the first half of the show, we have a local favorite, 30th District Assemblyman David Valadao. David, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So, you've been there 2 years now. What are your impressions of Sacramento?
It's pretty much what everybody thinks it is. It's a tough mess. I mean, you're in the minority as a Republican. You work your best to try to make some friends and try to get some things done. I got a bill signed last year by the governor, so I got to do something. But most of it's sitting on the committee and trying to shoot down bad bills and playing a lot of defense for the business community.
Well, you know, David, you say it's a mess, but that's your opinion because you're a Republican. The Democrats think just the opposite.
Yeah, but the kids in school and the prisoners that we're letting out into the communities will help prove our point that it's a mess in Sacramento.
And you know what's really interesting is you're only the Republicans are only 3 votes away from giving the Democrat 2 votes now away from giving them a supermajority. And with redistricting, I don't see any way it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, on the Senate side, it's going to be a tough fight, but there's still the opportunity. I think down south somewhere, George Plesha in San Diego is actually jumping in. I think he's got a good shot at winning and protecting that on the Senate side. The Assembly side, I actually see that we've got pretty good opportunity to protect it and maybe even grow.
What about your seat?
The seat that I'm sitting in now?
Yes.
It'll become the new 32nd. They're changing the number, and there's 2 candidates, Supervisor John McQuiston and Pedro Rios on the Republican side. And I think we got 2 great candidates, and we'll see who makes it out to make a run against the Democrat in the race.
You know, I don't know either one of those candidates, to be honest with you, but a friend of mine whose opinion I respect spoke very highly of Pedro Rios. So I don't know if you're leaning towards one of the 2 candidates, but they both appear to be pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know either one of them. I've gotten to know John McQuiston over the last year and a half a little bit because he comes up to Sacramento on behalf of Kern County Business. Pedro, I've met him probably 2 times. So
John's done a great job here in Kern County as a supervisor for the county of Kern for several years now.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about Governor Brown's state of the state. Is there any light there, or is he just expanding the budget differently?
Well, on the state of the state, and it's been a while now, but when he only spent a couple minutes talking about water was one thing that really bothered me. As serious as an issue as water is, and that was right after he had talked for a good 5 minutes about high-speed rail. And I wish he had taken a little more time to talk about water. Water is an issue that we need to focus on and put people back to work. That's the type of stuff that water helps create private sector jobs in the agriculture business and even in other communities, especially with hydroelectric power when you build a dam. So infrastructure needs to be done, and that should have been a priority. As far as everything else that's going on with the state, it's going to be a tough year. I mean, we're short money. Everybody's knocking on my door up here in Sacramento trying to find a way to protect their funding for their programs. And there's a lot of programs out there that I think most taxpayers would agree we need to continue to support. But I think all taxpayers would agree that we do need to make some good, honest cuts and actually look at cutting some of the waste, because we've got some of the most wasteful, bureaucratic messes up in Sacramento than anywhere I've ever heard of or seen in my entire life.
Well, they're not limited to Sacramento by any means. Also, why do we need to create private sector jobs when we've got the government, the federal and the state there to support us?
And that's the part that most people don't understand. When private sector jobs, if it's pumping oil, if it's manufacturing a product, if it's farming, growing a product, if it's dairy, producing a product, as in milk. When you produce something and you manufacture something, you create something that you can sell. And when you export that, if it's just to the next community over, if it's to another state or another country, you're bringing dollars into your community, and that helps pay for all the things that we need to pay for, like repairing our roads and our schools and all the things that we're supposed to do. As a consumer, if you get a job working for, let's say, the High-Speed Rail Authority building the track, and it's not a bad job, and obviously they're going to pay well, but that's going to be taxpayer money taken directly from private sector, put in your pocket, and you're going to spend it and probably buy something outside of the country. If your clothes is made in a foreign country, if your food's grown somewhere else, if your car's made somewhere else, what are you doing for the local economy? And that's what we need to focus on. We need to find ways to bring those private sector jobs back to the Central Valley, put people to work, and producing something so we can bring those dollars back into our community. And that's why I think it's so important, and that's one of the issues I've got with the state legislature. They talk about creating jobs, but as far as regulatory reform, as far as tax reform, anything that would help attract businesses to California, they've not only stopped, they haven't just continued the bad things that they've already done, but they're actually looking for more ways. Cap and trade's a prime example. AB 32, these things are going to be a disaster for our jobs when we start looking at how they're going to force people to buy credits to give them the ability to pollute. And it's basically the state coming in just printing money. When the state decides, okay, we need so-and-so manufacturer to pollute less, but we're going to print up these allowances, that business is going to have to buy these allowances and give money back to the state. And I look at that as the state printing their own currency, and I think that's wrong. And then second, it's adding another cost to a business in the community that if a guy was on the other side of the border to Nevada or Arizona or whatever other state, they wouldn't have to spend that money, and that would go directly into lowering the cost of that good, and it would compete with us at the store shelf.
Exactly.
And our consumers at Walmart or even one of the local stores would obviously pick the cheaper product, and that puts us out of business.
Exactly. Our guest by phone is 3rd District Assemblyman David Valadao. He did something else. Brown did something else in his state. Isn't he counting on federal money that isn't coming?
We're talking for high-speed rail?
Well, not only for high-speed rail, but to balance the budget. I mean, I was looking at the excerpts of it, and where the heck is he going to get this federal money he's thinking he's going to get?
Well, everything we've seen up here in Sacramento since I've been here is they rely on made-up numbers, stuff that any common-sense person looks at and knows is not going to happen, but it gets them by until the next year, and then the next year. And they just keep kicking the can down the road, and this is just, it's almost the norm up here. I mean, high-speed rail is a prime example. They're looking at $50 billion to help build a high-speed rail come in from the feds, and the whole pot of money that the feds created for high-speed rail nationwide, I think, is like $8 billion. So that we obviously know that the money's not there to fund all the things they want to fund, and they're not focusing on where they need to focus. They need to focus on cutting some money, cutting programs that are no longer necessary or wasteful, or actually get people used to not working. And we're paying people way too much money to stay at home and do nothing.
Well, in the private sector, David, aren't we going to have private industry step in and pick up a good part of that and pass some bonds in California that are going to be A+ rated and are going to be able to yield a high return to the investors?
No.
Hello, David, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I think that was good, Clay. I like that.
Well, let's start with private sector investors. Are we going to have any of those for high-speed rail?
In the background, we should be playing Dream, 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 Dream.
You know, and I'd love to see if a private sector, anybody would show up to be part of the high-speed rail. I know that people are going to line up to take some of the contracts. I mean, we all know that contracts with government is always a very lucrative place to be doing business as long as they pay their bills.
I'm glad you put that caveat there, because I know a lot of people that are upset because they're looking at 30, 60, 90, 120 days before they get paid.
Yeah, but we know that there are businesses in the community that are going to look at high-speed rail if it's for landscaping or for whatever it may be around high-speed rail. There's going to be those businesses, but to actually put up their own capital. Well, for that matter, what about what we're hearing? What we have up here in Sacramento? It's a lot of the labor folks that are really supportive of the high-speed rail. They look at this as a project that will keep giving them jobs for the next 30 or 40 years. And
right.
are they willing to put up their own pensions into this? If it's such a great business plan, if it's such a great idea, and it's going to return on investment, why don't they put up some of their own money and invest in that?
Exactly. David, when we get back, let's talk a little bit more about high-speed rail, okay? We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio, News Talk 1180.